Hey, Shalom, Akim, Shalom, Kahalo, Yahweh, Bashim, Yahushua, Bashim, Kahakadash. Send double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Send much peace, love, and salutations to Yakim out there pushing the word sincerity and truth. This is Brother Ariala. And this is just going to be like a real brief Algo update. I just wanted to send it around China and some of the things that's going on in China. Brother Tazama put me onto this video here with talking about the Beirut blast and some interesting information that Kim Iverson kind of has gone through. I wanted to touch on that. I wanted to touch on some information that AMTV kind of went into, and just go from there. And just to give brothers, a quick update on the kind of like the geopolitical, geoeconomic realm. So I'm gonna play clips from this. Go through a couple of scriptures, scriptures that we know, and then touching on that. Right now, what we see is China really is just expanding and doing what they've been taught from the West. They have built a global manufacturing infrastructure around the world that they can put cheap labor and build out goods and services really easily and really cheaply. They have taken their knowledge from what's been going on in these new 4G markets with FANG stocks, Facebook, Apple, Google, Netflix, and they've just taken that mindset and said we're going to set up and we're going to be ready for this new economy that's going to emerge with 5G and everything that's coming, and we're going to be at the forefront of it. And because they have the type of government they have, they've been able to move forward in a very powerful manner. So, but it's going to cause conflict, with all of these different central banks trying to control the world. It's just going to cause conflicts between all of these different elite families. And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a lot of posturing. We're seeing China go out in the South China Sea and shoot missiles. We're seeing the United States team up with Taiwan to say, hey, we got your back. And then even in this Beirut situation, with how trade routes are being disrupted, we can see that a larger conflict is at hand. So, no further ado, let's get it. You know what? Let's start with 2nd Ezra 15:46. And thou, Asia, that art partaker of the hope of Babylon, and art the glory of her person, woe be unto thee, thou wretch, because thou hast made thyself like unto her, and hast decked thy daughters in whoredom, that they might please and glory in thy lovers, which have always desired to commit whoredom with thee. And thou hast followed her that is hated in all her works and inventions. Therefore saith the Lord, I will send plagues upon thee, widowhood, poverty, famine, sword, and pestilence, to waste thy houses with destruction and death. See, China's going to suffer a similar fate as America because they are partakers. They've drunken down that wine, the wrath of fornication. And because they've done that, they're going to basically receive the righteous indignation from the Heavenly Father as well. And you see how COVID-19 is affecting China. You see, they're having issues with storms and famine. And now it's going to turn into an all-out war. They're going to be brought down into the valley of Jehoshaphat as well and be caught up in those regional conflicts because of all of the alliances that they've made to try to bolster their economy. They're going to be forced into the regional conflicts that's affecting the Middle East. And, they're going to suffer destruction as well, Verse 50 says, and the glory of thy power shall dry up as a flower. The heat shall arise that is sent over thee. Thou shalt be weakened as a poor woman with stripes, and as one chastened with wounds, so that the mighty and lover shall not be able to receive thee. Okay? So all of these things is being prepared to go down for China as well. They're not going to be the next ruling kingdom. No, they're going to be caught up too. So I'm going to play this. I'm going to start it over, and we'll get some info off of that.
There's too much information to pack into this thing. So in some aspects, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. There are some things I'm going to mention in this video that I've already gone into detail in previous videos, and there might be some things that I'll do in subsequent videos. So this is going to be, I'm going to just try to connect all the dots for you as to what I think really went on with that explosion in Beirut. What is the truth? So let's go ahead and get started on this. Now, I am going to assert that the explosion in Beirut was an act of sabotage, and that the act of sabotage was not for the reasons you might think. Now, many think it was Israel trying to secure its interests, and they might have helped. They might have even been the ones to pull it off, because they do have something to gain in trying to limit Iran and Hezbollah's influence in the country, but their interests were not the primary reason. Instead, the act of sabotage was an attempt to stop Chinese expansion. In fact, I'm also changing my mind about the mysterious numerous acts of sabotage that have been happening in Iran. I did a video saying that all of the numerous fires and explosions that have been going on throughout Iran's various different military installations, ships, ports, nuclear facilities, oil and gas pipelines. I thought that it was Israel trying to bait Iran into war in order to destabilize them and gain influence in the region. And again, they might be the ones pulling it off or helping, but I no longer think their interests are the primary focus. Instead, I think the primary reason...
Definitely the state of Israel's interests are the primary focus, just because the state of Israel is... They run the background for a lot of these nations, even China. And so their hand is playing both sides, the state of Israel. It's not just one-sided, okay? It's a multifaceted algorithm where these so-called Jews are playing both sides very, very well. So they are destabilizing Iran. And Iran is an important place to make sure that they're disrupted, to keep them weak and distracted. So, there's a video she had on this one. I guess I keep catching her with a weird looking face. And this one right here, there you go, baby. I got you. And this one right here, she goes, it's called Iran is being baited into war, mysterious explosions and sabotage. It's a good video, 11 minutes, concise. She goes to the information. I like the way she does videos. She doesn't waste a whole bunch of time. She gets straight to the information that she's gathered. And you can take that information and go research on your own. Okay, she keeps it simple. And that's why I like to use her videos as a platform to talk about prophecy, because she gets straight to the point, which is she's going to do on this one as well. I'm going to play a little bit more.
Iran has been under attack, has been to stop Chinese expansion. All roads lead to China. Yeah. At least the Belt and Road Initiative does. China unveiled in 2013 its plans to revive their ancient Silk Road.
Now, for you brothers that have been keeping up with the World War III algorithms, this is something that we've talked about over the years numerous times. And how when you start to mix currency and trade wars, it leads to real wars. And this has been classic through all antiquity. All right? This new One Belt, One Road, or the new Silk Road project, is something that China's been working on for the last 5 years. And they have moved fast. As you can see, this maritime route, when you're looking at this green, you can see why China is posturing in the South China Sea over here. They want to control and be able to move freely through these waters. As you probably know, we did a recent algorithm update on the issue that's been going on over here in Pakistan and on the Pakistani-Indian border, with China wanting to make sure that these ports, that they can move product. Okay? Over here, recently, China has been basically making sure that they have control over these ports over here in Africa, sending out loans, and now these guys are underneath these loans. Okay? I said Pakistan-Indian border. I'm sorry. The Chinese-India border. Okay? Moving up through these waters, and you can see that this is a critical move right here. All right? Right now, you have issues going on between Turkey and Greece, and all other types of issues. They've been making all types of deals, making sure that they have agreements with these nations, and this is in conflict with the current World Trade Organization trade routes. Edomite trade routes. So Esau and Moab, who have always been trade partners and dealt with each other, are about to be in a house divided against each other when it comes to trade and currency. and it will lead to conflict. It is leading to conflict.
Their vision is to connect a land and sea route around South Asia into Africa, up the Red Sea and the Suez Canal, into the Middle East, and onward into Europe. From there, the land route would go through Europe, into Russia, down through Eastern Europe, into the Middle East, through Iran and Central Asia, back into China. There's another smaller trade route that's being developed and was announced between China and Pakistan that goes through Pakistan-controlled Kashmir. So, why do I think the recent smaller explosions in Iran and the massive one in Beirut are to stop Chinese expansion? Well, it's not the only area this sort of sabotage is happening, and I'm going to get into that. We're going to connect all the dots. But China has been a rising nation for the past 20 or so years. Everyone has expected China would rise to become a world power. The thing is, they have been rising much faster than anyone anticipated. I think the advent of technology mixed with them being an authoritative nation that doesn't deal with one of the downfalls of democracy, which is needing to gain consensus and going through some red tape in order to make decisions. So because they've been able to avoid that, they've been able to rapidly. In 2013, when they announced their Belt and Road Initiative, it became clear they were on the fast track to world dominance. And this was very scary for the U.S. and the West in general. And historically...
See, and this is where it talks, what we mentioned here in 2nd Ezra, the 15th chapter, how basically they're trying to do the same thing as Babylon, right? They're a partaker of the hope of Babylon, which is that domination, that world domination. Even when you read in Job, the 20th chapter, these nations are going to come up against the beast system, okay? Okay? And so what we see is these elites trying to basically solidify this market of beast system. But you have these geoeconomic and geopolitical tumults and wars happening between these nations because it takes cooperation with the beast for this to happen. But the nations are angry, the nations are mad, so it's just causing more and more strife. Right? When you go to Job 20:12, it says, though wickedness be sweet in his mouth, though he hide it under his tongue, though he spare it and forsake it not, but keep it still within his mouth, yet his meat in his bowels is turned, it is the gall of asp within him. He hath swallowed down riches, and he shall vomit them up. The Most High shall cast them out of his belly. And he shall suck the poison of asp, the viper's tongue shall slay him. He shall not see the rivers, the floods, the brooks of honey and butter. That which he labored for shall he restore, and shall not swallow it down according to his substance shall the restitution be. He shall not rejoice therein, because he hath oppressed and hath forsaken the poor, because he hath violently taken away an house which he builded not. Surely he shall not feel quietness in his belly. He shall not save that which be desired. And you can read about that also in Habakkuk, the 2nd chapter, but how they've been able to take over all the natural resources of the world, put everybody underneath their foot, is going to cause worldwide turmoil in World War III. And China's going to be caught up in that, and they're going to get hit pretty bad too.
Rather than aggressively compete, the strategy has been to kneecap the competition. The U.S. and the West in general really waged a 50-year Cold War against the USSR to stop Soviet expansion. It was the number one focus of U.S. foreign policy from the 40s to the 90s. The U.S. waged numerous proxy wars and allowed thousands upon thousands of U.S. soldiers' lives to be lost and many more foreign lives lost in an effort to stop Soviet expansion. And the thinking was, if the Soviets expanded their influence around the world, they would become the world power and we would be at their mercy. So we did everything we could to stop their expansion, including wage proxy wars in Vietnam, Korea, Afghanistan, Iran, Malaysia, Algeria, all throughout Central America, Congo, Cuba, etc. We went all around the world trying to stop the Soviets. Now that China has become an increasing threat, it's looking like we might be using the same tactics. So let's go ahead and start with Lebanon, Beirut, and work our way backwards. Now, last week, an explosion of nearly 3,000 tons of ammonium nitrate leveled the port in Beirut, killing around 200 people, injuring thousands more, and leaving even more homeless. It was discovered that the ammonium nitrate was taken from a ship and had been sitting at the port for nearly 6 years. Now, ammonium nitrate doesn't spontaneously combust. It has to be ignited. So the question is, what was the spark? So there are speculations that it was a fire that was started by sparks during welding that was happening nearby. They're investigating this. They're trying to figure out what it was. Or that it was a fire that was lit off by fireworks that was being stored nearby. So the fire lit off the fireworks. The fireworks sparked the ammonium nitrate, which caused the big, huge blast. In an interview with the Associated Press, an Israeli explosive expert who works closely with the Israeli government said it looked like cheap fireworks made in China that sparked the explosion. Over the past several months, numerous reports have been coming out saying the Chinese government was striking a deal to add Lebanon to its Belt and Road Initiative. That China had been trying to land Beirut for years because the Middle Eastern port would be an incredibly strategic location for the trade route. The port would allow China to then create a direct rail link from Beirut to Damascus, through Iraq, and into Iran and onward. So the port in Beirut is incredibly strategically important to the Chinese initiative. They need that port. They also need the Lebanese government to be friendly. So if the Lebanese people think it was cheap Chinese fireworks that caused the explosion, they're a lot less likely to be welcoming of Chinese imports. Plus, with the calls for a revolution, the prime minister stepping down after the blast, we can assume the deal with China was that they were in the process of making now is probably on hold at best. So there will be a full court press attempt, I'm sure, by Western and Israeli leadership to get Western and Israeli friendly leadership in power in Lebanon. Israel immediately rushed to the country's aid, likely to try to gain influence within the new government. But so is China. So we're going to see how this all plays out. Now, China would have to rebuild that port. They're very strategic, important port. They would have to spend now an unknown amount of money, billions of dollars, to rebuild something that they otherwise would not have had to invest in. So this was a real way to really stick it to China. So if I had to bet, I would say that Israel's Mossad, alongside the CIA, lit off those Chinese fireworks that caused the explosion. And Israel definitely has something to gain, but it was mostly to stop Chinese from gaining that incredibly important foothold in the Middle East. So this takes us to Iran. Now, Iran has seen a series of mysterious explosions and fires targeting their military installations, nuclear power sites, gas pipelines, medical facilities, ships and ports, and industrial manufacturing facilities throughout their country. Now, at first it looked like Israel was attempting to bait Iran into war, but, Iran never falls for these antics, and the tactics were somewhat odd. There have been many of them since June, dozens, in fact, and the targets have been all over the board in regards to types of facilities. It's odd until you examine the deal that Iran and China just struck and announced in mid-July.
So all of this stuff is popping off. All this stuff is getting ready to be geared up. That's why you're seeing the United States come with so much propaganda and aggression against China. But it's going to lead into war. All right? And that's why we've seen so much disruption happen in Iran. They're trying to disrupt all of these different trade, economic, and political agreements that are being established for control.
China has agreed to invest $400 billion in phase one in Iran to help build up its infrastructure, specifically in its energy sectors of power, oil, and gas, and investments in transportation and manufacturing sectors. The deal also has a military cooperation component. So basically, it encompasses all the types of facilities that have mysteriously exploded or gone up in flames in Iran. And knowing these facilities that have mysteriously exploded or caught on fire in both Iran and Lebanon are the very facilities Beijing is interested in for their Belt and Road Initiative leads me to believe it's much more than just a coincidence, but an act of intentional sabotage in an effort to halt Chinese expansion. The Middle East isn't the only target to halt China's initiative. When we look at the map of the Belt and Road Initiative, you can see that it's not much of a belt nor a road unless China can get out of China. It needs to travel through Southeast Asia on the water route, and it needs to travel through Central Asia for the land route. So China announced their plans in 2013, and yet, interestingly enough, when you look through Southeast Asia, there's been an alarming rise of Islamist activity and terrorist attacks throughout Southeast Asia since 2015. Now, this is one of our age-old tricks against the Soviets. We armed, promote, and stuck Islamist extremists right at their border in order to keep them busy fighting terrorists. China's Belt and Road goes right into Southeast Asia, into Indonesia, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and Burma, right where there's been a serious uptick in Islamist movements. Along the land route, China needs to get out of its own nation by crossing through the Xinjiang region, where many of you heard about the Uyghur issue. What's less commonly known is China claims their beef with the Uyghurs isn't their Muslim religion. They have other areas in China that are Muslim majority where they're not having any problems. China's beef is specifically a separatist movement that has gained ground within the Uyghurs to create what's called East Turkestan. Now, interestingly, the government in exile of East Turkestan is headquartered in none other than Washington, D.C. The separatist movement is fairly...
Look at this, bro. They funded and created a proxy army in China, and they calling themselves East Turkestan. Got a national anthem, everything. You can't make this stuff up. You cannot make this stuff up. Jeremiah chapter 51 verse 7, Babylon have been a golden cup in the Lord's hand that have made all the earth drunken. The nations have drunken her wine. Therefore the nations are mad. Okay? The nations are mad. And it's not going to stop until the Most High gets the job done he wants. Gets the job done that he wants to be completed. All right? To make a fool of, to make into a fool, to act madly, act like a madman. That's what's happened to these nations. Because they bow down to the image of the beast, they've been put into a situation where they're compromised. And now these nations are trying to build up their own infrastructures and do their own thing. And they're going to fight. All right? They're going to want to fight. And that's what's going to happen, man. A fight.
New. It first started in the early 2000s, like many Islamist uprisings, and it's been able to gain ground year after year. Now, it is a very conservative, fundamentalist movement that seeks to create a nation similar to the Taliban in Afghanistan. I did an entire segment explaining in detail the Uyghur issue, so I'm not going to go into it fully here. So I'd encourage you to watch that video. But I will say that the only nations against China's methods of attempting to squash this fundamentalist movement are Western nations. So we're the ones that have been calling them out, saying this is concentration camps, this is genocide, these are human rights abuses. Interestingly, most of the Muslim majority nations, including Saudi Arabia, who is largely responsible for the rise of this ideology to begin with, as well as Egypt, Yemen, the Emirates, Morocco, Algeria, and about 40 other countries, have actually made statements supporting China in what they're calling their anti-terrorism strategy.
Right. So, basically that goes into how China is establishing this One Belt, One Road movement and how it's causing tumults within the United States and some of the Western countries that are trying to keep the power. But this is all a part of the overall algorithm leading into World War III. Because this One Belt, One Road is located all around basically this whole region around the world. You know what I'm saying? It's causing conflicts everywhere, man. It's causing conflicts in all different types of places. Ain't no getting around it, bro. Ain't no getting around it. Now, I wanted to play this real quick because that goes into the trade element, and we talked about the currency element, and so we have these things happening at the same time. Let's listen to my man Chris.
Cover an even bigger geopolitical shakeup and story that a lot of people, not just in the United States, but around the world, might be missing. I've been talking about this for over a decade, but now it is official. China and the Chinese government, Mr. XI, has declared the new digital yuan world reserve currency, challenging, I'm talking about this for a very long time, the United States dollar. So I'm going to get into that. Also, I want to read a quote from one of our founding fathers, James Madison, who said this. This is a direct quote. "If tyranny and oppression come to this land," referring to the United States, "it will be in the guise of fighting an imaginary foreign enemy." An imaginary foreign enemy. What is Trump and how is he described? The virus, the invisible enemy, he says. So think about that as we report this story today. Also, geopolitically, you have to understand that the 21st century warfare is not necessarily physical conflict, although I believe that will come.
And this is what happens whenever you see these nations establishing these different things, you know? I'll just wait till that's over. This is what you see. You know, these nations are starting to use these digital technologies to go ahead and move things forward. But to keep them looking good to everybody, they have to create imaginary conflicts and situations, use COVID, use all these different things and blame it on somebody else indirectly. So we're seeing what we call the propaganda machine build up against China, against Iran. And the so-called white man always does this before he gets ready to roll. He always does.
I mean, look how China has taken over Hong Kong. They now have their eye on Taiwan. The United States response has been muted. So far, Trump has done nothing outside of maybe just make his opinions known via a megaphone. China now has complete control of Hong Kong. They've been expatriating people back to the mainland to be prosecuted for exercising certain freedoms that Hong Kong had enjoyed for quite some time. And through China's Belt and Road Initiative, what they've been calling for years, and I've been reporting on for going over a decade, is the New Silk Road to spread out all across Asia, all across parts, I'm going to get to this in a moment, like Australia, New Zealand, and the South Pacific, as the United Nations says so itself, is now uniting into one. In fact, I'm going to show you a video. I don't really have to say much. I'll just show you what they're saying they're doing in terms of uniting the Pacific right now. But let's talk about the new world reserve currency, the digital yuan. This is going to be something, the renminbi, also known, Americans are going to have to grow used to because, of course, baby boomers especially, many of you tuning in, people like myself, younger generations have enjoyed the dominance of the superpower that has been the United States for most of our lives. Well, all of this has abruptly changed. We have, for example, Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve, our central bank, here on Thursday. He's going to speak. He's actually encouraging more inflation, and he's going to keep rates at zero. Real rates are negative, and he's going to probably prop up stocks even further, mostly the FANG stocks, and encourage more bailouts. What this is doing is weakening our currency, weakening the standard of living for all Americans as they roll out things like socialism and universal basic income. So this is a radical paradigm shift that Americans are going to have to get used to, being not just down a notch, but down multiple notches compared to other countries, because China is now leading the entire world, not with just its military and naval prowess, but now its new reserve currency. Now, of course, the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, where the largest growth is, the highest population centers. Again, there's more millionaires in China than there is in America now. They've been moving all around the world, moving all these financial assets. In fact, the United States for years, something Donald Trump is correct about, has basically been trading American jobs out to China and then selling out America overseas while they get rich and now exert their dominance worldwide. So data is the new oil. And the new warfare, although it will be physical at some point.
Data is the new oil. Data is the new oil. See that? And that's that transition to that market of beast system, where whoever controls how data is moved is controlling everything, because it's going to unlock access to everything. That's the fight.
And I'm going to get to a story in that in a minute. Geopolitically, is a data war based on technology. and the technological infrastructure and the technological paradigm, which is exactly why China has established itself as the leader of this new world order. And also its currency, the digital yuan, which has now been officially declared and announced. In fact, the digital yuan was added, fiat was added to the special drawing rights basket just a couple years ago as a part of the IMF. So now you have the United Nations uniting the Pacific, and in addition to that, declaring a great reset to a brand new paradigm and a brand new currency. And of course, the virus also ties into climate change conveniently as well. So this is where they're pushing all of us. Now, again, this is going to take a lot of getting used to in this post-planet lockdown world. And this is a pretty amazing thing, the digital fiat yuan. So I'm going to read this to you. The People's Bank of China, the PBOC, confirmed that a group of top banks started trials in electronic payment in 4 different Chinese regions using the new digital yuan, our new world reserve currency. And they talk about the official launch in what they call and have coined digital currency electronic payment as they go through an exploratory phase of blockchain tech. Same thing with the Federal Reserve was announced this week in the United States, although they're very much behind China. The United States is like in 6th place compared to the rest of the world. In fact, the Economic Freedom Index, the United States is like 20 now. In fact, I think Afghanistan might be higher. And I'm not even kidding. So they call this the DCEP, the DCEP. You've probably also read about other types of digital stablecoins that I've been broadcasting and talking about on this channel. This is what, of course, Mark Zuckerberg's...
So now he starts talking about, these other digital currencies, which I'm not interested in to talk about right now, because I just want to really lock in on what they're talking about with China. I want to skip ahead, and this will be the last part that I play, but it's just to give an update on what's going on. Let me play this part.
My words. This is from the CF, the bottleneck in Asian connectivity, and I'm guessing the back of the American long-standing dominance of the U.S. dollar reserve. I don't know if you can see that there. Again, these are not my words. This is from the CFR. Whether or not it's a World Economic Forum declaring a great reset, the United Nations calling for a Unite the Pacific New World Order, or it is the Belt and Road Initiative. Let me get out a map here because this is going to tie in a lot more to this story today. You can see the map. Okay, you can see how this connects all of Asia from a maritime and railway perspective. But at the heart of it, at the top of the pyramid, the new digital yuan blockchain-based currency, which could be backed by gold, by the way, in addition to other nation states, countries, continents in some cases, Australia and New Zealand. Now, this should be another aha moment. Notice, as they unite the Pacific, where the strongest emergency measures have currently taken place as a result of the invisible enemy, and the virus happen to be those places, like Victoria, Australia, or New Zealand, as in the case of Ardern, who has locked everybody down again for a second time. So let's talk about that for a minute.
It's going to lead into major conflict. And that's why you have these end-time prophecies starting to kick out. And we see these things when you read in Jeremiah 48, and it talks about the destruction of Moab. I want to just go ahead and skip down to verse 40. It says, "For thus saith the Lord, behold, he shall fly as an eagle, he shall spread his wings over Moab. Kirioth is taken, and the strongholds are surprised, and the mighty man's heart in Moab at that day shall be as the heart of a woman in her pain. See how it's likened unto Esau, how it's likened unto Babylon." Same thing. "And Moab shall be destroyed from being a people, because he hath magnified himself. He hath magnified himself against the Lord. Fear and the pit and the snare shall be upon thee, O inhabitants of Moab, saith the Lord. He that fleeth from the fear shall fall into the pit, and he that getteth up out of the pit shall be taken in the snare. For I will bring upon it, even upon Moab, the year of their visitation, saith the Lord. And they that fled should stood under the shadow of Heshbon because of the force, but a fire shall come forth out of the Heshbon, and a flame from the midst of Shihon shall devour the corner of Moab, and the crown of her head of the tumultuous ones. Woe be unto thee, O Moab, the people of Kishmash perisheth. For thy sons are taken captives, and thy daughters captives, yet will I bring again the captivity of Moab in the latter days, saith the Lord, for thus is the judgment of Moab. So Moab has always been in the eye of the Heavenly Father. We're seeing another round of prophecy come back to Moab as they've coupled themselves with Esau, which is the daughter of Babylon. And so we're going to see another round of judgment. And you're going to see Moab get caught up in World War III. They're going to get caught up in all this conflicts that's happening in the War of Armageddon in the Valley of Jehoshaphat. And they're going to be beaten down by missiles. They're going to be beaten down by bloodshed and war. You're going to see more pestilence and bad things come because they've drunk of the wine of the wrath of fornication, you know. So, yeah, I just wanted to bring that update. We see these economic systems and political systems all converging right now at the same time for the sake of prophecy. All right, and this happened in the ancient times with Moab, and it's going to happen in modern times in Moab because there's nothing new under the sun. The Most High is bringing this process all around again, man. So, call halal Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahweh Shah Ba'ashem Kodash. Double honors once again to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Much peace, love, and salutation to y'all came out there pushing the word sincerity and truth. Hey, Shalom.